Okay, 10 points. 1, recognize that individual differences are not essence but form of manifestation, that there is more to us than our individual differences. Thus, motives, cognitive structures, and attitudes are not seen as an identity with the individual, but merely as the forms of expression of that individual. In other words, we're not reductionistic to making us into animals. Study other systems, other psychologies from other cultures, and see what they can tell us about the human condition. And let's not just keep reiterating what we said 10 years ago and 20 years ago. I went to a lecture yesterday in which the lecturer spent all the time telling what psychologists had been saying for the last 30 years. It's like the blind reiterating what the blind have been doing to stay blind. I can't believe it. Recognize that there are other ways of knowing other than through the senses and through the intellect, which might help us deal with some of the phenomena of one-trial learning and might allow us to treat creativity as other than neurosis. Einstein said, "I did not arrive at my understanding of the fundamental laws of the universe through my rational mind." Put that in our pipe and smoke it. Recognize that aberrant behavior is not necessarily pathological, but possibly they know something we don't. Not always. But in India, they make the distinction between what are called masts and neurotics. And that's that grid, those axes. On this axis, the personality axis, a person can get caught in an other ego structure that is non-adaptive, and we say they're neurotic. But it is also possible that a person, just like I did in the 60s, will find myself on the stage where they all look like fish. And you can say, well, that's aberrant personality, or you can say he is struggling to integrate new planes of consciousness and see it on a vertical thing, and that's what they call masts in India, and they treat them with respect and love and tenderness and give them the space to work through what they need to work through. We have to make some distinctions. We are putting everybody in the mental hospital, which is as good a place in society as any, but we can do better than that. We do recognize now that the experimenter is part of the experiment, and thus it behooves us to work upon ourselves as experimental measuring instruments and as part of the experiment proper. Work on ourselves by not just filling our minds with constructs, but rather in simultaneously learning to empty our minds into quietness. I was told in a lecture yesterday that meditation was a passing fad that would soon leave, demanded by the students because of their cultishness and faddishness. I would like to point out that I think that meditation is one of the most profound tools for extricating yourself from identification with your thinking mind. And it turns out that cogito ergo sum isn't correct. I think, therefore I am. You are and you think. It's quite different. You are not an identity with your thinking mind. And you can meditate for yourself and find that out. There is a line in the Tao that should be over every university library, at least. It says, the student learns by daily increment. The way is gained by daily loss. Loss upon loss until at last rest. The more you empty, the more you will be Yeshidondan and you will hear. And yet at the same moment, you can learn and develop your skills and your concepts and your structures, but be not identified or attached to them. Use them functionally, but don't identify with them. The most profound book that I work with in my life now is a book. It's this whole thing. This is the whole book. It's 3 or 4 pages. It's called the Sin Sin Ming, the teachings of the third Chinese patriarch of Zen. And if you would just like the first 2 lines of it, first 4 lines, just to show you what kind of work is in store. The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. Enough said. When love and hate are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised, it goes on. But make the slightest distinction, and heaven and earth are set infinitely apart. It doesn't mean you don't have attitudes, opinions, desires, needs, perceptions. It means you have them, you work with them, you use them, but you can let them go. They aren't who you are. Don't get caught in identifying with your seersucker jacket or your plaid pants or your blue skirt. Cull the mystic and religious literature for viable psychological variables. Keep open to your imagination, which, as Einstein points out, is infinitely more important than your knowledge. Integrate what we are with what we know, and don't act as if our humanity is an impediment to our science.